It was supposed to be empty. The soldier and his loyal German shepherd had entered the derelict house thinking it was just another search in a flood-ravaged town. But as silence pressed heavy against the broken walls, a sound threaded through the dark, soft, trembling, almost impossible, a whisper from upstairs. And in that moment, the mission changed. It was no longer about clearing a ruin. It was about finding the life hidden inside before the storm claimed it forever. The house didn't sit on the street so much as watch it. Set back behind a tangle of dead hedges and a wrought iron fence bent by years of neglect, the old Victorian hunched under the storm like a guilty secret. Shingles missing. Porch sagging. A top window with a crack like a lightning fork frozen in glass. People said it was empty. The kind of empty that outlived deeds and owners and even memories. But on nights like this, nights when the rain pinned everything down, empty places felt crowded with things you couldn't name. Evan Cole paused at the gate and tested the latch. It screeched like something waking up wrong. He winced, then pushed through, one hand steady on the strap of his rescue pack, the other keeping his flashlight pointed down to keep from telegraphing his approach in a beam. Beside his left knee, Rex matched his pace, a big-boned German shepherd with the quiet gait of an animal trained to read the world without making it react. The dog's ears flicked back at the sound from the gate, then forward again, attention narrowing to the house's open mouth of shadow. House clear, then out, Evan told him. Habit. He didn't have to talk to Rex for the dog to understand, but words had a way of keeping the night from swallowing him whole. Quick sweep. Check for bodies, hazards, squatters. We're gone in 5. Rex breathed once in a way that wasn't a bark, wasn't a whine, just a tiny confirmation. Here, with you, ready. Wind drove the rain sideways, needling Evan's cheeks. He stepped onto the porch and the boards flexed beneath his boots, rubber soles squeaking on old paint. He swept his light low over the threshold. The front door was ajar, its mortise lock shot out at some point years ago. Around the knob, the wood was spidered with splits that reminded him of bone fractures on X-rays. He reached over and nudged the door with his knuckles. It opened a few inches more, a breath exhaled by the house's throat. Inside, air moved in slow layers, cold, damp, tasting of plaster and mold and mouse droppings. Evan's mask filtered the worst of it, but smell is memory, and this one wrote, abandoned, compromised, not safe. He brought the beam up, low and steady, over the entryway. Faded wallpaper sloughed from lath. A staircase rose to the left, ribs of its treads exposed where carpet had been stripped and never replaced. To the right, a parlor with a bay window bowed under the strain of rain, its lace curtains fossilized with dust and cobweb. He checked the threshold for prints. The wood took impressions readily in wet weather. Their footfalls, recent enough to shine where water had darkened them. 3, maybe 4 sets. He traced them with the beam, coming in, circling, heading toward the back. Kids, maybe. Or scavengers. Or, his jaw set, someone seeking a dry corner and failing to realize what houses like this did to ankles and lungs and luck. Rex lifted his nose and pulled a half step forward. Evan stilled him with 2 fingers against the shoulder. Slow, he said. 2 room clears. We keep the exit to our back until we don't. The rules remained even when the building was more story than structure. They took the parlor first. The floor sloped and complained. Evan felt the give and took stock, calibrating the house's mood the way you do with an animal you don't completely trust. A low bookcase had collapsed under its own cheapness and the weight of damp paperbacks. On the mantel, a clock without hands sat between 2 candlesticks furred with dust. He let the beam kiss the corners, looking for nested signs, bottles, bedding, a sock. Nothing, unless ghosts had adopted the place and learned to pack out their trash. Clear, he murmured, and they reversed, backing into the entry, then angled down a short hallway toward the kitchen. Here the stink changed, taking on a sweet, rotten note. The refrigerator had been dragged open and left to gape its metal intestines at the room. Someone had been here. More recent than the footprints suggested. He swung the beam to the sink. A bowl lay there, enamel chipped, wet ring around it where recent water had beaded. The rain could have done that, he told himself. Or someone with a thirst and bad timing. A crash upstairs cut his thought in half. Evan froze. Rex didn't. The dog turned his head up, ears pricked so hard they trembled, eyes fixing not on the ceiling but on a position beyond the ceiling, as if he could see through. Evan's heart ticked higher, the extra beats crisp and useful. "Wind," he whispered. As if wind could answer. Another sound followed, not crash now, but a long, careful creak. Weight moving. Not a raccoon. Not wind. Weight that knew floors from chance. He stepped to where he could see the stairs without committing to them. The banister had once been proud. Now its spindles had lost teeth. The runner was gone, but tack heads remained like rows of tiny eyes. He kept the beam low, kissed the first tread with the light in his boot, accepting the argument both made with his weight. It held. He tested the second, then the third. He felt the house remember how to bear a person, not willingly, but through muscle memory it could no longer name. Rex placed his paws on the first step, then waited, trained to let Evan go first whenever a path narrowed. At the fourth tread, Evan paused and listened. Under the rain's hiss in the walls, a new sound threaded, a fine clicking, intermittent. He thought, water dripping through a cracked gutter onto a loose metal sheet. He let it pass and identified the important noises, above and ahead, a tiny shift inside a room, and then, nothing. The kind of nothing that includes a held breath. He motioned Rex to heel and climbed the rest of the way, step by step, putting his weight where stringers would be strongest, edges, near the nosing, not dead center. At the landing, a narrow hall ran the house's spine. 4 doors, one at the front, 2 along the side, 1 at the back. Wind flexed the roof and the hallway breathed. Old houses did that, exhaling their pasts in drafts and sighs. He swept the beam left to right. Paint had blistered. The floor was layered in dust that had turned to paste wherever rain had found seams. He opened the first side door with the back of his hand. A small room. Child's, once. Wallpaper faded to ghosts of balloons and stars. A bed frame crouched without a mattress, its springs spooled like metal ivy. A dresser leaned with a missing drawer's grin. Something tiny sat on the windowsill, a marble, glass cloudy with age. He moved to the next door. A bathroom. Clawfoot tub with enamel spidered, a mirror cracked from corner to corner, making one face into a dozen broken ones when he passed the beam across it. The front room drew him like the pull of a magnet in a warning. He palmed the door and pushed. The beam cut across dust and made it into fog. A big bay with that cracked pane. Rain tapped the glass with coin-fine fingers. A trunk sat in the middle of the room, leather dried to scales. On top of it lay a folded blanket, no dust on it. Fresh. Evan's neck prickled. He reached out and pinched a corner. Damp. He lifted the lid with 2 fingers and kept his face angled away in case something launched. Nothing did. Inside, old clothes, a child's shoe, a frame with the photo face down, as if turned for shame or grief. He replaced the lid and turned for the hall. His boots left clean prints in the dust paste. His training told him what that meant. Whoever else was here had seen those prints and knew he wasn't the first ghosts the house was hosting tonight. Back in the hall, he put 2 fingers to Rex's chest and felt the dog's heart, fast, contained, not panic. The shepherd's nose kept swinging toward the rear room. Evan started that way, slow. The door at the end was half closed. The gap between it and jamb offered a strip of black like held breath. He kept the beam on the floorboards, let the light crawl toward the door's underside. The house breathed again, boards shuddering, wind making negative space where the door met frame. In that small moving line, he saw crumbs of paint tremble. "Anybody up here?" Evan called, pitching his voice to a register that carried without sounding like a threat. "Search and rescue. You're not in trouble. If you're hurt, call out. If you're hiding, you're not safe. Floors are rotten. I don't want anyone going through." Silence. The kind that answers with a dare. He reached across the jamb and knocked twice with his knuckles, soft, human, announcing. The sound returned, dull through old wood. "I'm opening," he said, and eased the door with 2 fingers and the gun hand ready but still at low aim, habit he didn't have to draw on anymore, but the muscles remembered. The door bit, then relented, swinging a foot, 2. Dust moved in the beam like constellations falling. The room beyond was narrow, long, under the slope of the roof. Rain had made lines on the walls through an old leak, like someone had been drawing with invisible ink and the storm had developed it. A cot had been dragged near the window. On the cot, a nest of blankets. At its foot, a toy truck, blue paint flaked to a map of ocean and island. On the floor, a plastic water bottle with the cap off, 3 sips left. Next to it, a peanut butter jar with the seal newly broken. He smelled the sweetness under mold sour. "Hello," he tried again, softer. The house gave him a groan from some deep timber, old nails ringing. And then he heard it, so close to nothing he wasn't sure it wasn't his pulse or Rex's breath. A whisper. 2 syllables rubbed thin by fear, threaded through rain and space in a voice that hadn't been brave enough to be loud in a long time. "Don't go." Evan went still from boots to shoulders. He knew when to move, he knew when to become air. He cut the beam and let the room darken for a count of 2, so if anyone crouched inside the dark, they could feel that the light had mercy and wasn't a weapon. When he raised it again, he angled it low, then up along the far wall. There, behind the cot, where the ceiling sloped to meet the floor and a narrow triangular crawlspace opened into the room like a little cave, 2 eyes. Wide. Reflecting his light like coins at the bottom of a well. A face behind them, small, half hidden by hair and dirt. The rest of the body a bundle wedged in the angle as if the geometry itself was a shield. Rex made a sound so soft it was more vibration than voice, a rumble paired with a sigh. Evan put the back of his hand down where the light could find it and moved his fingers once, slow, so the little shape would see that a hand can be a bridge, not a net. "Hey," he said, keeping the word as warm as a cup between cold palms. "I hear you." The eyes didn't blink. If anything, they widened. "My name's Evan," he said. "This is Rex." He tipped the beam off the eyes so the child could breathe and let it rest on the floorboards between them, building a pool of light neither too near nor too far. "We're here to get you out. The floor's not our friend. But if you come to me, I can carry you. We'll go slow. We'll keep the stairs from taking a bite out of either of us. You don't have to talk. You don't have to move fast. You only have to move." Silence filled with rain and the small animal sound of someone telling themselves to choose. Then, the whisper again, shaped more than spoken. "Don't leave." Evan nodded once, knowing the child could feel motion better than sight in the dark. "I won't," he said. And made the word a promise he'd built a career out of keeping. He flattened his hand on the floor, palm up, and waited for the house to finish another long, shuddering breath. The air in the crawlspace was thicker than the rest of the house, as though dust and fear had conspired to build their own atmosphere there. Evan could hear every drop of rain working its way through cracks in the roof, every groan of timber carrying strain down the walls. His flashlight cast its pale circle, steady but not invasive, and in that pool of light, the eyes never left his. Rex remained perfectly still at his side, nose twitching, muscles coiled yet calm. The shepherd understood, this wasn't a chase or a takedown. This was patience, and patience saved more lives than speed ever could. His tail was low, his ears pricked, but his gaze was fixed not on the child as prey, but as puzzle, a fragile thing to be understood and protected. Evan kept his voice low, soft, and deliberate. "You're safe with me. Nobody else is in this house. I checked." He let the silence sit a moment, so the words could filter through the child's terror. "The floor here might not hold me if I come closer. That means you have to do the brave part. Just a little bit. Just enough for me to reach you." The eyes blinked once, and then a face shifted, hair parting to reveal a cheek smudged with soot or dirt. Thin arms hugged knees drawn to chest. The figure was smaller than Evan had guessed, maybe 8, maybe younger, though hardship could make a child look older and younger all at once. "Hungry?" Evan asked gently, opening his pack one-handed. He drew out an energy bar, unwrapped it, and let the smell of peanut butter and oats mix with the stale air. He placed it on the floor between them, sliding it forward with 2 fingers. Rex didn't move toward it. The dog knew his job. He simply flicked an ear, as if to confirm he'd seen the offering. The child's gaze darted to the bar, then back to Evan, suspicion warring with desperation. Slowly, fingers unlatched from knees. The small body unfolded, hesitating. One hand crept out of the crawlspace, pale and shaking, nails broken. It snatched the bar and disappeared back into the shadows. A rustle, a crinkle, and then, tiny bites, the sound of survival choosing over fear. Evan let his breath out slowly. "Good," he said, though he knew praise needed to be careful, measured. He tapped 2 fingers softly against the floorboards, not a command, but a rhythm, a heartbeat in wood. "You've already done the hardest part. Now the rest gets easier." From below, the house answered with another groan. The entire structure seemed to shift, a ripple running down the hallway as though the storm had pressed harder against the walls. Evan felt the floor tilt a fraction under his boot. His instincts screamed at him to move, to grab the child and flee, but training overruled. Panic made mistakes. Mistakes in this place would kill. Maya. The name came so softly from the crawlspace that Evan almost thought he'd imagined it. The whisper was raw, barely a voice. He tilted his head, leaning closer without adding weight to the boards. "Maya? That's your name?" A tiny nod came, barely more than a shiver. "That's beautiful," Evan said. "Maya, I'm Evan. This here is Rex. He's trained to help. He's strong enough to carry things twice his size. He won't hurt you. He won't leave you." He let that sink in before continuing. "I need to get you out before the storm takes more of this house. Will you let me help you stand?" The crawlspace remained silent. Only the faint chewing of small teeth on the energy bar punctuated it. Then, after a long pause, Maya whispered again, "Promise?" Evan's throat tightened. Promises were currency here, heavier than gear, sharper than weapons. He didn't give them lightly. "I promise," he said, steady as stone. "Stay with me, and I'll stay with you." Rex shifted, sensing something change in the air. His nose lowered, ears flicking once. Evan felt it too, a tremor. The storm outside had pushed new water against the house's foundation, rattling it from beneath. A sound like tearing cloth echoed through the walls. Somewhere downstairs, glass shattered. Evan raised his voice just enough. "Maya, we move now. Slowly. Come to me. Crawl out of there." The shadow inside the crawlspace trembled, then inched forward. First hands, then knees. The flashlight caught the pale line of a thin arm, the curve of a shoulder. Maya's face came clearer, dirt-smudged cheeks, wide eyes set in hollows too deep for her age. She wore a sweatshirt 2 sizes too large, sleeves frayed, knees of her jeans torn open. She dragged herself across the boards, each movement cautious, as if expecting the floor to open beneath her. Evan extended his hand, palm up, fingers open. Almost there. Her hand touched his. Small. Cold. He closed his grip gently, not pulling, just anchoring her. Good. That's it. Rex leaned in, sniffing softly at her wrist, tail giving the smallest wag. Maya froze at first, then blinked at the shepherd's amber eyes. Something in her posture loosened, the kind of shift that comes when you realize the world has at least one friend left in it. Evan drew her closer until she was kneeling in the beam of his light. He studied her quickly, thin but not wasted, alert but exhausted. She'd lasted days here, maybe more, feeding herself from what she could scavenge. But her voice, the whisper that had called him, spoke of a child on the edge. Up now, Evan said, sliding his arm under her shoulders. On 3. He counted low, 1, 2, 3. She rose, shaky but upright. The floorboards creaked dangerously, complaining under even her slight weight. A crack popped from the far corner. Evan's head snapped around. The plaster wall split along an old seam, dust sifting down. The house was losing its fight. Time's done, Evan muttered. He clipped the spare carabiner from his harness to the strap of Maya's sweatshirt, tying her to him in one swift knot. He kept his voice steady. We're leaving. You stay right here against me. Don't let go, no matter what the house does. Maya's whisper came again, not plea this time, but command, stay with me. Evan's jaw tightened. Always. He turned them toward the hall, Rex bracing the lead. Behind them, the crawlspace seemed to sigh, as if relieved to release its fragile secret. The storm pushed harder, the house groaned louder, and the real escape was only beginning. The hallway seemed narrower with Maya pressed against him, every creak of the boards magnified by the fragile weight tethered to his harness. Evan moved carefully, testing each step, shifting his weight to edges where the wood had the best chance of holding. His flashlight swept ahead in slow arcs, kissing walls covered in peeling wallpaper, catching the seams of old water stains that looked too much like veins. Rex took point, his paws almost noiseless despite the storm's roar outside. His ears flicked constantly, triangulating every shift in the house's breath. The shepherd's presence was an anchor, one steady rhythm of muscle and will that grounded them in a place where everything else felt ready to fall away. Maya clung tightly, her small fists gripping the strap of Evan's jacket. Her whisper came again, shaky but insistent, don't let go. Not a chance, Evan murmured, his words steady despite the tightness in his chest. You're not leaving my side. They passed the bathroom, the cracked mirror splitting their reflections into a dozen ghostly fragments. Evan caught sight of himself, mud-streaked, soaked, eyes dark with strain, and almost didn't recognize the face. He turned the beam away quickly. Maya didn't need to see ghosts tonight, least of all in the man meant to protect her. Halfway down the hallway, the house reminded them it was dying. A thunderclap struck, not from the sky but from within the structure itself. Somewhere below, a support beam surrendered with a splintering snap. The floor beneath Evan's boots buckled slightly, then steadied, but the message was clear, the house wasn't theirs for long. Evan crouched slightly, lowering his center of gravity, shifting Maya higher onto his hip. We move faster now, he whispered. No running. Just steady. Maya nodded against his chest, lips pressed tight. Rex responded with a low growl, not aggressive, but a warning. He, too, could feel the timbers complaining. At the top of the staircase, Evan paused. The sight chilled him more than the rain. The staircase had changed since he descended. Several treads near the middle sagged, warped, as if the house had aged decades in the short time they'd been upstairs. Water dripped steadily from above, forming a slick sheen on the wood. This is going to be tricky, Evan muttered. He studied the geometry, calculating angles and weight distribution the way he once had when planning extraction routes under fire. Every step had to be chosen, or they'd go down with the staircase instead of on it. Scared, Maya whispered into his collar. I am too, Evan admitted softly. But scared just means we're awake. Awake means alive. He tilted his chin toward Rex. See him? He's not scared. He's watching, ready. You and we follow him. Rex looked back once, eyes bright in the flashlight beam, then padded onto the first tread with the careful confidence of a predator. The step creaked, but it held. Evan followed, his boots testing every inch. The third step sagged alarmingly. He shifted sideways, pressing closer to the banister, distributing weight across the edge. The banister itself groaned, but it didn't give. Count for me, Maya, he said, trying to keep her engaged. 1, she whispered as he stepped. 2. Her small voice wavered but didn't break. By the fifth tread, the air seemed heavier. Evan's chest burned with the strain of balancing her weight and his own against boards that hated both. Behind them, a sound cut through, a sudden sharp crack from the crawlspace room they'd just left. The cot collapsed, slamming to the floor. The noise echoed like a gunshot through the house. Maya jerked, burying her face against him. Don't leave me. I'm here, Evan said, voice a steel thread. He adjusted his grip and moved again. Rex cleared the middle sag, leaping the worst of it with a powerful push, claws finding the next solid tread. Evan judged the distance, exhaled once, and followed, half jump, half controlled fall. His boots landed, the board groaning but holding. Maya let out a sharp cry, her arms choking tighter around his neck. Almost, Evan soothed, even as his knees jarred from the landing. They descended the last few steps faster, gravity aiding where hesitation would only kill. The moment Evan's boots hit the entryway floor, a groan thundered above them. He spun just in time to see the landing sag violently, dust and plaster falling in a choking cloud. Within seconds, the top hallway collapsed into itself, the doorways folding like broken jaws. If they had stayed 30 seconds longer, they'd have been buried. Evan pulled Maya tighter, shielding her from the dust. Rex barked once, sharp and commanding, snapping them back to focus. The shepherd's gaze darted toward the front door. But the door wasn't the way they'd entered. It now hung twisted, warped by the shifting frame. Its bottom half was already submerged, water pressing through as the storm found every weakness. The way out was shrinking. Evan moved forward, pressing his shoulder against the doorframe. The wood resisted, swollen with water, swollen with defiance. He leaned harder, feeling the structure bite back. The storm was trying to keep them. Hold tight, Maya, he growled, every muscle burning. Rex lunged beside him, claws scrabbling at the crack, adding weight with his body. Together, soldier and dog forced the door open an inch, then 2. Water surged in, icy against their boots. Evan shoved one last time, and the door burst outward into the storm. The porch waited beyond, sagging, water lapping at its posts. Beyond that, the yard had turned into a shallow river, carrying branches, trash, pieces of lives. Lightning lit it all in a blinding strobe. Evan staggered forward, Maya pressed tight to him, Rex leaping into the flood ahead. They were out of the house. But survival wasn't guaranteed. The storm had only changed the battlefield. Behind them, the old house groaned one final time. A whisper seemed to ride the wind, faint, sorrowful, before the roof caved inward, drowning the upstairs in a roar of collapsing wood. Evan didn't look back. He couldn't. Not yet. Stay with me, Maya whispered against his chest, voice trembling but alive. He clenched his jaw. Always. The storm swallowed them whole the moment they stepped off the porch. The flood reached Evan's knees instantly, icy and relentless, the current pulling at his boots as if it wanted to steal him from under his own weight. The porch they had left behind groaned, tilted, and then disappeared into the dark water with a sound like bones snapping. Maya whimpered into his chest, and Rex barked once, sharp and clipped, as if announcing to the night that they would not be dragged down so easily. Evan tightened his grip on the girl, shifted her higher against his chest, and angled toward the remnants of the yard fence. The wrought iron posts jutted out like broken teeth, their tops barely visible above the water. He remembered them from their approach, once neat, once ornamental, now just hazards waiting to trip him. He picked his path carefully, flashlight cutting quick arcs across the flood's restless surface. "Maya," he said over the storm, forcing calm into his tone. "I need you to keep your eyes open. Look at me. We're moving forward, step by step." She trembled, but her eyes lifted. Rainwater streamed across her face, washing dirt into rivulets, but she met his gaze. "Stay with me," she whispered. "Always," Evan answered, steady as stone. Rex forged ahead, body angled against the current. The shepherd moved with uncanny awareness, muscles coiled, tail low, every step measured. He was more than a guide, he was a scout, testing each foothold before his soldier committed to it. His ears flicked, head turning sharply to the left. Evan followed the motion and caught sight of movement, something large floating downriver. A section of roof, broken free from another house, was bearing down on them. Shingles stuck out like jagged teeth, and the timber beam at its edge spun in the current like a weapon. Evan's pulse spiked. If that mass struck them, carrying Maya, they wouldn't have a chance. "Rex!" Evan barked, shifting his stance. The shepherd leapt sideways, climbing partially onto the twisted fence post. Evan followed, boots slipping on the submerged gate, but he heaved himself onto it just as the roof section slammed past, striking where they had been seconds before. The impact sent water surging, waves battering their legs, nearly knocking Evan sideways. He gritted his teeth and held fast, muscles burning. Maya's arms squeezed tighter around his neck. "Don't let go." "I won't," Evan rasped, forcing his boots back into the flood. They pushed on. The current tugged at every step, and the storm's howl made the world small, just the circle of his light, the pounding of his heart, and the dog's steady form cutting the water ahead. Debris floated everywhere, a chair, a door, a child's stuffed bear swollen with rain. The bear spun slowly, its button eyes catching the flashlight beam, staring blankly as it vanished downstream. The sight hit Maya harder than anything so far. She buried her face against his jacket. "That was mine," she whispered, voice muffled. Evan's chest tightened. He didn't ask if it was really hers, or just a memory projected onto what she'd seen. It didn't matter. "You'll get another," he promised. "Something better. Something new." The yard ended where the street began, though now it was indistinguishable, a river rushing between rows of half-submerged houses. The current grew stronger here, funneled by the buildings. Evan paused at the corner, scanning. To the right, the street sloped downward into deeper black water. To the left, higher ground, though still treacherous, climbed toward the hill. Lightning tore across the sky, revealing the hilltop trees again, their crowns thrashing. That was the goal. Safety, or something like it. "Left," Evan said firmly. "We take the rise." Rex angled immediately, muscles bunching as he pressed against the stronger current. Evan followed, leaning into the water, every step a negotiation. Maya's weight pressed into him, light yet monumental, the kind of weight that meant everything. Halfway across the street, the house behind them collapsed with a thunderous roar. Wood split, glass shattered, and the old Victorian folded into itself like a dying animal. The sound was so violent, so final, that Evan felt it in his chest more than in his ears. Maya gasped, jerking to look back. Evan turned her face against his collar. "Don't. It's gone. We're not." She clung tighter, whispering the words that had carried them this far, "Stay with me." He pressed his jaw to her wet hair. "Always." The water deepened suddenly, surging up to his waist. The current seized harder, ripping at his legs. His boots lost purchase, and for a heartbeat he was drifting. He slammed a shoulder into a stop sign post, gripping it with one arm while holding Maya high with the other. Rex swam back instantly, clamping his teeth on the strap of Evan's pack, anchoring him. The shepherd growled, muscles straining, until Evan found his footing again. "Good boy!" Evan shouted, his voice rough. He pushed forward, step by punishing step, until the ground rose under his boots again. They reached the far curb. The water thinned back to knee depth, though the current still pulled like claws. Evan staggered onto the cracked sidewalk, chest heaving. Rex shook violently, sending a spray of water into the storm, then pressed back to his soldier's side, ready. Ahead, the hill loomed closer. Its base was a slope of mud and tangled roots, water gnawing at its edges. The climb would be brutal, but it was their way out. Evan crouched briefly, adjusting Maya so she could breathe easier against his chest. Her lips were blue, her body trembling. He rubbed her back, firm and steady. "We're close. Just a little more." She lifted her head, eyes wide, rain dripping from her lashes. "Promise?" He met her gaze, unflinching. "I don't break promises." Rex barked once, sharp, facing the hill. The dog was already ready. It was up to Evan to make sure they all followed. They began the climb. The hill's base rose out of the flood like a wounded giant, roots exposed, soil bleeding into the water. The slope was steep, slick with rain, and cut through with rivulets where the storm had carved its own rivers. For a moment, Evan just stared at it, calculating routes the way he once did when maps were drawn in sand and time was measured in seconds, not hours. There were no stairs here, no handholds designed for safety. Just mud, roots, and willpower. He shifted Maya higher on his hip. Her small arms hung around his neck, trembling but locked. She'd stopped whispering, too tired to repeat the words that had carried them through the house. That silence hit him harder than thunder. He pressed his cheek against her wet hair. "Not far now," he said, voice steady for her sake. "We'll make the top." Rex stepped ahead, his paws sinking into the mud, claws carving desperate purchase. The shepherd glanced back once, ears forward, waiting for the signal. Evan gave it with a nod. "Go." The first steps were a battle. The mud didn't just slip, it moved, sliding down with every attempt to climb. Evan jammed his boots deep, pressing against roots when he found them. He used one arm to steady Maya, the other clawing upward, his hand sinking to the wrist. Each pull tore skin on rocks hidden under sludge. The flood surged behind them, lapping higher. Debris slammed into the hill's base, the impact shaking soil loose. If the water ate too much more, the slope itself could shear away. Evan forced the thought down. "Keep moving." Halfway up, Chris stumbled. The man, still weak from his earlier ordeal, clung to a root, face contorted in pain. "I can't." "You can," Evan snapped, his voice like iron. "Eyes on me. Don't look down. You fall, you drag us all." Rex growled, pressing against Chris's side, urging him upward. The dog's body was a ladder of muscle and certainty. Chris swallowed hard, teeth chattering, but obeyed. He crawled, hands clawing at the mud, following Rex's lead. The mother clutched her baby, every step a prayer. The boy beside her dug his fingers into roots, face streaked with mud and rain. His backpack had been abandoned, lost to the flood, but he didn't look back for it. His entire focus was the glow above, the flare's faint promise still visible through branches. Evan climbed last, anchoring the group, Maya pressed against him like she'd been stitched to his chest. Every muscle screamed, but he refused to falter. He'd carried worse loads, in worse places. But never one that whispered "stay with me" in a voice too small for the storm to notice. Lightning struck close, the crack of thunder instantaneous. The shockwave rattled the hill, sending a cascade of mud sliding under them. Chris cried out, slipping, his grip failing. Evan lunged, one hand catching the rope clipped to the man's chest. For a heartbeat, His entire body weight threatened to drag them backward. Rex barked furiously, claws digging deeper, anchoring them both. "Climb!" Evan roared. His shoulders burned, tendons screaming, but he hauled until Chris found footing again. The man collapsed against the slope, chest heaving, but alive. Maya whimpered, her first sound in minutes. "Don't leave him." "I didn't," Evan said through clenched teeth. "Nobody gets left." The climb continued. Each foot forward was stolen from the storm. Evan's flashlight beam caught the hilltop, thicker trees, firmer ground. He could almost taste the air there, cleaner, safer. Then the hill itself rebelled. A chunk of slope above them tore free, a mudslide triggered by the rain's relentless weight. It came down like a wave of earth, roots, and stones tumbling with lethal intent. "Hold!" Evan shouted. He pressed his body against the slope, curling around Maya, shielding her from the impact. The slide roared past, mud and debris battering his back, rocks striking his shoulders. He grunted, pain flashing white in his vision, but he held his ground. Rex braced beside him, snarling at the mudslide as if to defy its right to fall. When the slide passed, the slope above was raw, gouged. But it also revealed a new path, firmer ground, rockier, less likely to shear. "Up there!" Evan barked, pointing. He forced his legs to move, dragging them all toward the new path. His boots found rock, slick but solid. One hand after another, he pulled himself higher. Maya clung tighter, her whisper returning like a spark rekindled, "Stay with me." "Always," Evan gasped, lungs burning. Step by brutal step, they neared the top. The flare's glow grew brighter, voices faint but real carried through the storm. Rescuers. Life. The circle of safety waiting for them. At last, Evan's hand closed around a pine root that didn't budge. He hauled himself over the edge, collapsing onto the plateau. He pulled Maya onto solid ground, then reached back, dragging Chris, the boy, and the mother with her baby. Rex scrambled last, shaking off mud, his eyes scanning the horizon even in exhaustion. They had made it. The hilltop was no paradise, wind still howled, rain still cut, but it was solid. It would not collapse beneath them. Evan lay on his back, mud-caked, chest heaving, staring at the flare's glow through branches. He turned his head. Maya was still beside him, lips trembling but alive. She met his gaze, whispering the only words that mattered. "You stayed." His throat tightened. He reached for Rex, who pressed his head against Evan's shoulder. "Always." The plateau wasn't peace, it was reprieve. The pines bent and snapped overhead, their branches flailing like arms in the gale. Rain hammered down, less a shower now than a torrent that flattened the grass and turned every hollow into a pool. Evan pressed one palm flat to the mud, steadying himself as his chest rose and fell in heaps. His other hand never left Maya's back. Her ribs fluttered against his arm, her whisper riding the storm again, "Stay with me." "Always," he said, his voice rough but unbroken. He shifted her higher into the crook of his arm, then sat back on his knees. His flashlight beam swept the plateau, scattered rocks, a handful of skeletal pines, and beyond, a faint shimmer of light where the flare burned. Rescue. Hope. But distance still remained. Chris collapsed against a trunk, coughing, his body shivering with each rattle. His lips had gone purple, his movements sluggish. Evan knew the signs, hypothermia creeping in, stealing strength one shiver at a time. The boy hovered near his mother, eyes wide, one hand still clinging to the shredded strap of his lost pack. The woman pressed her baby tighter to her chest, rocking gently, though the motion was more instinct than comfort. Rex paced between them all, tail low, ears swiveling. His amber eyes caught the beam, glowing fierce, a reminder that even in the wild storm, loyalty held. He returned to Evan's side, leaning his weight against the soldier's leg. Evan inhaled, forced the world to shrink down into choices. Stay put and wait for rescuers to reach us? Or move closer to them before exhaustion drags us under? The plateau was solid, but not invincible. Another mudslide could shear off the slope beneath. And hypothermia didn't wait. "We move," he said, more to himself than anyone else. He adjusted Maya's strap, clipped it tighter to his harness. Then he rose and scanned the group. "Chris, you stay upright. Lean on Rex when you have to. Don't fight him, let him carry some of you. Ma'am, keep the baby's face shielded. The boy stays between us, not ahead, not behind. Understand?" The mother nodded, eyes hollow but obedient. Chris groaned something like agreement. The boy swallowed hard and whispered, "Okay." Evan angled them toward the flare's glow. The path rose steeply again, roots snarling from the ground like veins, rocks slick but solid under mud. It was climbable, but only if they all believed it. They began the ascent. Each step was theft. Mud slid under boots, hands clawed at roots, knees bruised against stone. Maya whimpered into Evan's chest, her small body trembling with each jolt, but her whisper stayed, "Stay with me." "Always," he panted back, over and over, each word a vow hammered into the storm. Rex forged the path, his claws gouging deep, his body a wedge of certainty. Chris staggered, swore, leaned hard on the shepherd's harness, and somehow kept moving. The boy slipped once, but Evan caught his wrist, pulling him up before gravity could steal him. The mother crawled more than walked, the baby silent now, dangerously silent. Evan glanced, saw the infant's chest rise shallow but steady, and pressed harder. Halfway up, the storm struck harder. Lightning slammed into a tree nearby, splitting it with a scream of wood and fire. The trunk crashed across their path, mud spraying. The flare's glow flickered through the smoke and rain, a heartbeat almost swallowed. "Go around!" Evan shouted. He angled them left, pressing against the hill's curve. Mud poured in small slides, washing their legs, threatening to drag them back. Evan shoved forward anyway, muscles burning, lungs raw. Maya's weight against him felt both featherlight and crushing, light because she was small, crushing because she mattered more than anything he'd ever carried. At the ridge, the ground leveled slightly. The flare burned brighter now, 20 yards ahead, pulsing red through trees. Voices carried faintly, orders, shouts, the clipped tone of responders fighting their own battle against the storm. "We're close," Evan called. Rex barked, ears up, tail stiff. His body went rigid, then angled to the side. Evan swung his light, and froze. A gap. Not wide, but deep. A fissure had opened in the ridge where the earth had split under the storm. Water gushed through it, a dark stream cutting the hill in two. 10 feet across, maybe more. Too wide to leap carrying a child. Too deep to cross without drowning. Chris swore weakly. The mother gasped, clutching her baby tighter. The boy whimpered. Maya whispered into Evan's collar, "Don't drop me." Evan's mind raced. Options. Build a bridge? No time. Circle around? Too dangerous. That left only one thing. He unclipped his coil of rope, fingers moving despite the cold. He tied one end around Maya, snug across her chest, the other around his own harness. "We're crossing," he said, voice sharp. "One at a time. I'll go first with her. Rex anchors. Then the rest." The mother's voice cracked. "You'll fall." "I won't," Evan said, steel in his tone. He handed the remaining rope to Rex, clipping it to the shepherd's harness. The dog braced instantly, muscles coiled like steel cables. He stepped to the edge, water roaring below, rain stinging his face. He crouched, holding Maya so she could see his eyes. "Do you trust me?" Her lips trembled, but she nodded. "Then count with me." 1, he said, shifting his weight. 2, she whispered, gripping his jacket. 3. He leapt. The world shrank to nothing but air, rain, and the scream of gravity. The rope snapped taut, Rex growled and braced, and Evan's boots slammed against the far bank. Mud gave, slid, but he drove his knees in, clawed upward, and rolled them both onto solid ground. Maya gasped, clutching him so tightly he thought she'd never let go. "You didn't drop me." "Never," Evan rasped. He anchored the rope, shouting back. "Next." One by one, they crossed. The boy, trembling but determined. The mother, clutching her baby. Chris, hauled like deadweight, Rex snarling encouragement into his ear. Each one made it. Each one lived. When Rex leapt last, the shepherd soared through rain, landing hard beside Evan, shaking mud from his coat. Evan dropped to one knee, pressed his forehead against the dog's, whispering, "Good boy." The flare blazed just ahead. Voices shouted. Rescuers. They had made it across the storm's last trap. Maya's whisper came again, softer now, almost like a sigh. "Stay with me." Evan closed his eyes, clutching her close. Always. The flare was close now, so close Evan could almost feel the warmth of human presence through the storm. But the last stretch of the hilltop wasn't merciful. It was jagged, cluttered with splintered trees and rocks slick as glass, the ground churning under the weight of endless rain. Every gust of wind felt like a hand trying to push them back into the valley. Evan moved steadily, Maya strapped against him, her cheek pressed to his collarbone. She was shivering, but her arms stayed tight, as though she had fused herself to him. "Stay with me," she whispered again, but this time her voice was so faint it was almost a dream. "Always," Evan murmured, brushing her wet hair back with his chin. He needed to keep her awake. Needed her whisper as much as she needed his answer. Rex stayed at point, weaving between fallen branches, paws digging into mud with the certainty of an animal who had never once doubted the ground beneath him. His tail flagged low but steady, each step chosen with care. The shepherd stopped suddenly, ears snapping forward, body stiffening. Evan froze. "What is it, boy?" The beam of his flashlight cut through the rain, and caught movement. Just ahead, near the flare's glow, a man stumbled into view. He wasn't a rescuer. His clothes were torn, his face pale. Blood streaked down one side of his head. He staggered toward them, lips moving soundlessly. Then his knees buckled, and he collapsed face first into the mud. "Damn it," Evan muttered. He adjusted Maya, then shouted over his shoulder, "Stay put." He rushed forward, Rex already beside the fallen man, sniffing frantically. Evan rolled him over. The man's eyes fluttered open, wild and unfocused. "Help," he croaked, spitting mud. "My wife, still, in the car." Evan's stomach clenched. Another life. Another impossible choice. He looked downslope in the direction the man's hand had weakly pointed. Through rain and trees, faint headlights glowed underwater. A vehicle half-submerged, trapped against a fallen pine. "Damn it all," Evan whispered again. He looked back at his group. The mother clutched her baby, wide-eyed. The boy's lips trembled. Chris leaned heavily against a tree, nearly spent. Maya pressed her face deeper into his chest, as though trying to hide from the choice she knew was coming. He breathed hard, tasting iron. "All right. We split it." He turned to the mother. "You keep moving to the flare with the others. Don't stop until you're in their hands." The boy shook his head violently. "No, we can't leave you." "You're not leaving me," Evan said firmly. "You're going to safety. I'll be right behind you." Maya stirred, whispering through chattering teeth, "Stay, with me." Evan kissed the top of her wet head. "Always. But if I don't get her too, I'll hear that whisper for the rest of my life." We can't leave anyone. He unclipped Maya's tether, crouched low, and passed her gently into the mother's arms. Keep her strapped. Hold her like your own. His eyes bored into the woman's until she nodded, understanding the weight of the charge. Rex whined, ears flicking between Evan and the group. With me, boy, Evan said. The shepherd stiffened, then pressed against his leg, ready. Evan looked once more at Maya. She reached a trembling hand from the blanket, fingers brushing his glove. Promise. He clasped her hand, firm, and said it like an oath carved into stone. Promise. Then he turned, sprinting with Rex into the storm. The slope toward the trapped car was treacherous. Water cascaded down in torrents, making every step a risk. Evan slid half the way, bracing himself against trees, mud coating his arms. Rex bounded beside him, his bark sharp against the roar of rain. At last, the vehicle emerged from the dark. A sedan, wedged sideways against a pine, half buried in mud and water. One headlight sputtered dimly, the other drowned. Inside, through the fogged glass, Evan saw movement, a woman pounding weakly on the window, her face pale with panic. Evan waded forward, water rising to his waist. Hold on, he shouted, though his voice was swallowed by thunder. He reached the car, grabbed the handle. Jammed. Of course. He smashed the butt of his flashlight against the glass. Once, twice, on the third strike, it spidered, then gave, water rushing in. He reached inside, grabbed the woman under the arms, and heaved. She screamed, half from fear, half from the shock of icy water flooding in. Out! Now! Evan barked, dragging her free. She clung to him, coughing, gasping. Her legs buckled instantly, useless. Rex barked again, circling them, then planting himself to brace against the current. Evan threw the woman's arm over his shoulder, then began the brutal climb back up. Every step was war. The mud tried to take them. The storm shoved them sideways. Twice Evan nearly fell, once saved only by Rex seizing his sleeve and hauling with teeth and muscle. The shepherd snarled at the flood as if daring it to try again. At last, they crested the ridge. Evan collapsed to his knees, dragging the woman onto solid ground. She sobbed, clutching at him, then at Rex, who licked her mud-smeared face once before moving back to his soldier's side. The mother and boy had reached the rescuers by then. Floodlights stabbed through the storm. Voices shouted, running toward them. Evan's chest heaved with relief. Maya wriggled free from the mother's arms and bolted toward him, the blanket trailing like wings. She flung her arms around his neck, whispering fiercely, "You stayed." Evan crushed her to him, his voice breaking but firm. Always. The rescuers surrounded them, pulling the injured woman into their care, wrapping the group in blankets, guiding them toward the circle of light. Evan finally let himself sag, Rex pressed against his leg, both of them shaking from exhaustion but alive. And above it all, the flare hissed, its light burning steady through the storm, proof that whispers could still be answered. The plateau had become a staging ground. Rescue workers moved like shadows under floodlights, their reflective gear flashing in brief bursts as rain sheeted off helmets and ponchos. Radios hissed, voices sharp with clipped commands, 2 more blankets, get that force started, keep the thermal packs on her chest, move, move. The chaos was organized, the kind of order born from repetition and desperation. Evan sat at the edge of it, mud soaking through his uniform, breath coming in ragged pulls. Maya clung to him, arms around his neck, whispering her mantra even now, "Stay with me." He answered each time, though his voice had thinned to a rasp, "Always." His muscles trembled with exhaustion, but he refused to loosen his grip on her. She was the thread that had pulled him through the storm, and he would not let the thread break now. Rex stood beside them, head high, water dripping from his thick coat. His amber eyes never stopped scanning, watching the rescuers, the treeline, the black void of the valley below. his stance wasn't relaxed. He was still on duty, still waiting for the next threat. A rescuer crouched in front of Evan, holding a flashlight angled away to spare his eyes. "Sir, we'll take the girl now. She needs heat and fluids." Evan's arms tightened reflexively around her. Maya whimpered, hiding her face against his chest. "Don't let go," she whispered. Evan looked at the rescuer, his jaw set. "I'll carry her until we're secure." The man hesitated, then nodded. "All right. But stay close. We've got medics on standby." He hurried off, shouting orders again. Evan rose, groaning with the effort, shifting Maya so her legs wrapped his waist. She felt lighter than she had any right to after hours in the storm, but the weight of responsibility made her heavier than stone. He followed the rescuers toward a cluster of makeshift shelters, tents lashed to trees, their canvas flapping in the gale. Inside, light glowed warm and golden, a fragile defiance against the storm. They ducked into one of the tents. The sudden relative quiet was shocking. Rain still drummed, thunder still growled, but canvas softened the edges. Heat radiated from a propane heater in the corner. The air smelled of damp wool and antiseptic. "Here," a medic said, laying out blankets on a cot. "Set her down." Evan hesitated. Maya clung harder, whispering urgently, "Stay with me." He crouched low, pressing his forehead to hers. "I'll be right here. I promise." Her wide eyes searched his, then slowly, reluctantly, she let him ease her onto the cot. The medic wrapped her in thick blankets, tucking hot packs against her sides. Maya's eyes never left Evan's face. He pulled a chair close and sat at her side, resting one mud-caked hand on her shoulder. Only then did she exhale. Rex lay down at the foot of the cot, his body curled but alert, his tail tapping once when Maya reached a hand toward him under the blanket. The shepherd lowered his head, letting her fingers rest against his fur. Chris was brought into the tent next, his body trembling uncontrollably. Two medics descended on him, stripping soaked clothes, wrapping him in layers of silver thermal. His lips moved soundlessly, eyes glassy. Evan recognized the edge of hypothermia's grip. The mother and her children sat nearby, the boy's eyes huge as he clutched a steaming cup of broth. The baby, bundled in dry blankets, gave a thin wail, weak, but alive. The mother's tears mingled with her smile as she rocked the infant. For the first time since stepping into the old house, Evan let himself breathe without counting the cost. But the storm wasn't finished. A crackle on the radio snapped everyone's attention. "We've got more survivors down by the bend, water's rising fast. Need backup, now." Rescuers scrambled, voices overlapping. Packs were grabbed, ropes slung, helmets tightened. The storm roared as if feeding on the urgency. Evan stood instinctively. His legs protested, his arms ached, but his body responded before his mind caught up. He looked at Maya. She stared back, panic flaring in her eyes. "Don't go," she whispered, voice breaking. "Stay with me." The words tore through him. He knelt by her cot, cupping her cheek in his muddy hand. "I promised you I wouldn't leave. And I won't. I'm right here." But there are others out there who whispered too. They just didn't have a voice loud enough for you to hear. Her small fingers gripped his wrist with surprising strength. "Promise you'll come back." He bent low, pressing his forehead to hers. "Promise." Rex rose, shaking out his coat, tail stiff, eyes locked on his soldier. He was ready. Always ready. Evan turned to the medic. "Stay with her. Don't let her think she's alone." The medic nodded firmly. "She'll be safe." Evan squeezed Maya's hand one last time. Her whisper followed him as he pulled on his soaked jacket, as he stepped back into the storm, as the night swallowed him whole again. "Stay with me." He whispered back into the rain, voice almost lost, "Always." and with Rex at his side, he vanished into the chaos, answering the storm's next desperate call. The storm had a way of bending time. Minutes stretched into hours, hours into something unmeasured. Evan moved with the rescue team down the slope, his boots sliding in mud, his flashlight beam jittering against trunks and floodwater. Rex stayed glued to his side, eyes burning with focus. Every step deeper into the storm pulled Evan farther from the cot where Maya lay whispering for him to stay, but it also pulled him closer to the others who still hadn't been found. They reached the bend where the radio had reported survivors. The flood here was worse, a black torrent dragging whole trees downstream. Houses that had once lined the street were gutted, their walls torn away, insides laid bare like ribs. A half-submerged SUV bobbed against a collapsed shed, its roof barely visible. From inside, faint pounding echoed, frantic and muffled. "There," one of the rescuers shouted. He plunged waist-deep into the water, gripping a rope line tied to a pine. Evan followed, Rex leaping in ahead of him without hesitation. The current nearly bowled them over. Evan leaned against it, lungs burning, until they reached the SUV. Inside, two figures pressed against the glass, a man and a teenage girl, faces pale, eyes wide with terror. The water had already risen to their chests. "Hang on!" Evan shouted, though he knew they couldn't hear clearly. He smashed his flashlight against the window once, twice, until the glass gave with a deafening crack. Water rushed in. The girl screamed, but Evan was already reaching, hauling her out through the gap. She clung to him like a lifeline, coughing. Rex lunged forward, teeth sinking into the man's sleeve, tugging as Evan pulled. Together, Soldier and Shepard dragged the man free just as the SUV shifted and sank, sucked under in a roar of bubbles. "Go! Go!" Evan barked. They stumbled back toward the rope line, the girl gasping, the man half-dragged between them. The current clawed at their legs, but Rex braced, anchoring them against its fury. Inch by inch, they made it to the bank where rescuers hauled them onto the mud. The man collapsed, coughing up floodwater. The girl sobbed into Evan's chest. He held her tight for a moment before passing her into the arms of a medic. "Two more lives," someone said, relief sharp in their voice. Evan barely heard. His chest heaved, his arms burned, and through it all, Maya's whisper echoed in his skull, "Stay with me." He had promised her, but the storm kept demanding more. They pressed on. Another call crackled through the radio, an elderly couple trapped on a rooftop. Then a child swept onto a tree branch downstream. Each mission bled into the next. Evan climbed, swam, hauled, his body a machine running on fumes and will. Rex never faltered, his teeth and muscles saving as many as Evan's arms. By the time the eastern sky hinted at dawn, they had pulled more than a dozen souls from the storm's grip. At last, the commander ordered retreat. "Water's too high. We regroup on the plateau. Move out." Evan obeyed, though every fiber of him wanted to keep going. He turned back only once, watching the flood devour what little remained of the town. Then he followed the line uphill, Rex at his side, legs trembling with exhaustion. When they crested the plateau again, the camp was transformed. Survivors huddled under every tent and tarp. Children cried, mothers rocked them, men stared blankly into the storm. The flare still burned, but now its glow mixed with lanterns and headlamps, a fragile island of light in a black sea. And there, on a cot near the heater, Maya. Her eyes lit the moment she saw him. She pushed free of her blankets, wobbling to her feet despite the medic's protest. "You came back," she cried, her voice hoarse but fierce. Evan dropped to his knees, catching her as she threw herself into his arms. He held her tight, burying his face in her damp hair. "I promised," he whispered. "I always keep my promises." Rex nosed between them, tail thumping weakly. Maya laughed through her tears, pressing her forehead to the shepherd's. "You too," she whispered. For the first time all night, Evan let the weight ease off his chest. Around them, the camp still buzzed with urgency, still fought the storm, but here, in this small circle, there was peace. The medic crouched beside them. "She needs rest," he said gently. "So do you." Evan nodded, but his arms didn't loosen. "Not yet." Maya's whisper was faint now, softened by exhaustion, but it carried the same weight as when he first heard it in that broken house. "Stay with me." He closed his eyes, rocking her gently, and gave the only answer there ever would be. "Always." Dawn broke slowly over the storm-scarred landscape, turning the horizon into a wash of muted gold and gray. The rain had tapered to a drizzle, but the land still shivered under the aftermath. Roads turned to rivulets, trees splintered and uprooted, homes standing as fragile skeletons of what had been. The air smelled of mud, wet wood, and rain-soaked earth, a raw, elemental scent that seemed to echo the night's violence. Evan sat on a mud-caked log, his uniform shredded, boots heavy with water and sludge. Rex lay beside him, ears twitching at every distant crackle, tail flicking occasionally in unconscious vigilance. The warmth of the small fire they had managed to keep alive provided comfort, but the chill from the storm still seeped into his bones. He watched as the rescue operation continued, medics moving with tired but unyielding precision, survivors huddled in blankets, volunteers distributing food and hot drinks. And then he saw her. Maya. The little girl moved carefully through the chaos, her small legs wobbling but her eyes bright. She carried a handmade card, its edges damp, the paper curling under the drizzle. She made her way toward him, glancing at Rex who trotted ahead to greet her with a low, happy whine. Evan stood as she reached him, taking the card gently. "For me?" he asked, voice thick with exhaustion. She nodded solemnly. "For you, and Rex." Her small fingers brushed over his muddy hand. "Thank you for staying. For never leaving me." He swallowed hard, emotion choking the words in his throat. "I promised you," he said softly. "Always." The card unfolded to reveal a crude drawing of a house, surrounded by water, with a soldier and a dog holding hands with a small girl. Beneath it, in shaky handwriting, the words, "Thank you for being my hero." A lump rose in Evan's throat. He bent down, pressing his forehead gently against hers. "And you're my hero for holding on," he whispered. Maya smiled through tears, then ran to hug Rex, who nuzzled her back, patient and protective. The camp was slowly quieting. Some survivors had been moved to safer locations, helicopters arrived to transport the more seriously injured. Others lingered, staring at the devastation with a mix of gratitude and disbelief. The storm had taken a lot, but it had left something behind as well, a raw, undeniable connection between people, a recognition of courage and kindness that outshone fear. Evan looked around, taking in the scene. Volunteers from neighboring towns had arrived, strangers lending hands, blankets, and food. The camaraderie was unspoken but deeply felt, every action, every small gesture, a silent promise that the community would endure, rebuild, and heal. He spotted Chris, the man they had rescued earlier, sitting on a fallen tree with a blanket wrapped around his shoulders. He waved weakly, mouthing a silent thank you. Evan nodded, a small smile breaking through his grime-streaked face. Then his gaze fell on the old house at the edge of the plateau, the one that had been abandoned, shrouded in darkness, a place where the first whispers had been heard. Now, in the light of dawn, it seemed almost tender, almost human. Its windows reflected the early light, broken but glimmering with potential, and the door hung slightly ajar, revealing a darkened stairwell. Evan felt a pull toward it. He approached cautiously, Rex following, ears alert. Every step forward was measured, the memories of the previous night flashing in his mind, the creaking floors, the whispers, the fear, the calls for help. He climbed the steps slowly, each one groaning under weight and wear. At the top, a room opened up, illuminated faintly by the morning light filtering through cracked windows. And there she was, another child, small and frightened, hidden beneath a tattered quilt. She had been trapped overnight, scared, calling out softly but unheard amid the storm's roar. Evan knelt beside her, extending a hand. "It's okay," he whispered. "You're safe now." The child hesitated, then clutched his hand tightly. Rex stayed close, nose brushing her arm in reassurance. Carefully, he carried her back down, taking slow, steady steps. Each one felt like a triumph, or reclamation from the chaos that had nearly claimed everything. Once on solid ground, the child was immediately wrapped in dry blankets by medics, eyes wide with gratitude and awe. Parents reunited, children clung to rescuers, and slowly, the panic ebbed, replaced by cautious relief. Evan finally allowed himself to sit, breathing heavily, watching as Maya ran to the child, holding her hand in solidarity. "See? We stayed together," Maya said, voice bright. Evan smiled, pressing a hand to his forehead, finally allowing exhaustion to wash over him. Rex lay across his knees, tongue lolling, eyes soft but alert. The shepherd had been the unspoken hero, his loyalty unwavering, his courage a steadying presence amid chaos. Evan scratched behind his ears, whispering, "We did it, boy. All of it." As the sun rose fully, the storm's remnants glimmered in the morning light. Pools of water reflected the sky, mud streaked the landscape, debris lined the streets, but amidst it all, there was life, laughter, and an unshakable sense of hope. The old house still stood, silent but no longer threatening. Evan glanced back once more, imagining it restored, alive with warmth and safety rather than whispers and fear. He envisioned children playing in its yard, neighbors talking freely, a community resilient and unbroken. And for a moment, standing in the soft golden light, holding the gratitude of the rescued children and the loyalty of his German shepherd at his side, Evan allowed himself to hope, not just that they survived the storm, but that they had all gained something larger, the understanding that courage, compassion, and steadfastness could turn the most harrowing night into a dawn filled with possibility. Maya tugged on his hand again. "Let's go," she said. "There's so much to tell everyone." He laughed softly, hoarse but genuine. "Yes, let's." Together, soldier and child, with Rex bounding ahead, walked toward the heart of the camp, ready to face the day, ready to live beyond the storm, carrying its lessons, its fears, and its triumphs. "Stay with me," Maya whispered one last time. "Always," Evan replied, voice steady, heart full. And for the first time in a long night, the words felt true for everyone, for everything.